Okay, welcome back to Lawrence Explains Online Academic Tuition. So in the previous video I started to look at this AQA 2019 English Language Paper 2. We looked at question 1, which was a content question. Now we're going to move on to question 2. So the question here mentions you need to refer to both source A and B in this question. The writers in source A and B are traveling on very different types of boats. Use details from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the different boats. So we have yet to look at the second source, so we're going to do that now. We're going to look at source B now. So let's read through this first of all. And I think as we do, I might just underline features of the boats as we're going through it. It'll just save me a bit of time later on. So let's have a look here. So in 1893, William Hudson traveled by sea to Patagonia, a remote area in South America, to study birds. In his book, Idle Days in Patagonia, he describes the journey to get there. The wind had blown a gale all night, and I had been hourly expecting that tumbling, storm-shaken old steamship in which I had taken passage to Patagonia. I'm just going to underline that there. In fact, maybe I'll come back to the underlining because otherwise it's going to interrupt me. Would turn over once and for all and settle down beneath the tremendous tumult of waters, for the groaning sound of its straining timbers and the engine throbbing like an overworked human heart had made the ship seem like a living thing to me, and it was tired of the struggle. Another tumult was peace. But at about 3 o'clock in the morning, the wind began to drop, and taking coat off and boots, I threw myself into my bunk for a little sleep. Ours was a very curious boat, ancient and much damaged, long and narrow in shape, with the passengers' cabins ranged like a row of small wooden cottages on the deck. It was as ugly to look at as it was unsafe to voyage in. To make matters worse, our captain, a man over 80 years of age, was lying in his cabin sick. Our one mate was asleep, leaving only the men to navigate the steamship on that perilous coast, and in the darkest hour of a tempestuous night. I was just dropping into a doze when a succession of bumps, accompanied by strange grating and grinding noises and shuddering motions of the ship, caused me to start up again and rush to the cabin door. The night was still black and starless with wind and rain, but for acres round us the sea was whiter than milk. I did not step out. As close to me, where only our lifeboat was fastened, 3 of the sailors were standing together, talking in low tones. "We are lost," I heard one say, and another answer, "Aye, lost forever." Just then the mate, roused from sleep, came running to them. "What have you done?" he exclaimed sharply. Then dropping his voice he added, "Lower the lifeboat, quick." I crept out and stood unseen by them in the dark. Not a thought of the wicked act they were about to engage in entered my mind at the time, for it was their intention to save themselves and leave us to our fate in that awful white surf. My only thought was, at that last moment I would spring with them into the boat and save myself. But one other person more experienced than myself, and whose courage took a better form, was also near and listening. He was the first engineer. I don't know what this is doing here. Anyway, he was the first engineer. Seeing the men making for the lifeboat, he slipped out of the engine room, revolver in hand, and secretly followed them. And when the mate gave the order to board, he stepped forward with the weapon raised and said in a quiet but determined voice that he would shoot the first man who would attempt to obey him. The men slunk away and disappeared in the gloom. In a few moments, the passengers began streaming out to the deck in a great state of alarm. Let me move over to the actual original just to read through the rest of this. Streaming out of the deck in a great state of alarm. Last of all, the old captain, white and hollow-eyed, appeared like a ghost among us. We had not been standing there long when, by some freak chance, the steamship got off the rocks and plunged on through the seething, milky surf, then very suddenly passed out of it into black and comparatively calm water. For 10 minutes she sped rapidly and smoothly on. Then it was said that we were stuck fast in the sand of shore, although no shore was visible in the darkness. There was no longer any wind, but through the fast-breaking clouds ahead of us appeared the first welcome signs of dawn. It was true enough that we were stuck fast in the sand, but although this was a safer bed for our steamship than jagged rocks, our position was still a perilous one, and I at once determined to land. Okay, so, if this GCSE exam does not put you off travelling by boat, I don't know what will. But anyway, we've got this old boat, this old expedition. They've gone on to Patagonia. I've heard the name William Hudson before, so presumably he was a notable explorer of some kind, or a notable ornithologist, a guy studying birds. So let's get back to the question itself and just remind ourselves of what the question was. You need to refer to source A and B for this question. The writers of source A and B are traveling on very different types of boat. Use details from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the different boats. So let's go in and let's just do this really quite quickly and almost aggressively. So let's have a look at this source B here first of all, as we've just read it. What is going on with the boat? Storm-shaken old steamship. What else do we have? Groaning sound of its straining timbers. Engine throbbing like an overworked human heart. Curious boats. Ancient and much damage, long and narrow in shape, passengers' cabins, wooden cottages on the deck, ugly, unsafe, captain over 80 years of age, sick. Okay, so that I think that's most of the details about the ship itself. Is there anything else here? I don't think so. I think those are the main details about the ship itself. Let's go back to the other boat. And let's have a look here. I'll underline that in a different colour. Boat, brand new. Bought straight from the race organisers. Coped well. Obviously it's a rowing boat. Anything else? They obviously do have a cabin, but it's just one cabin. What else do we have here? Obviously the name is the Spirit as well. So they had become complacent. So it was more their own fault in a sense, or partly their own fault that they lost their possessions. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to basically outline the differences between the two boats. So let's just quickly remind ourselves, what was the name of the first boat? Does it have a name? So William Hudson. Okay, so let's just quickly plan the answer here. So we've got source B. He has a steamship and it's in a poor condition. And then in source A, it's Ben Fogel. What was the other chap's name? James Cracknell. let me just check how you spell Cracknell's name. Don't want to get a name wrong that's been given to you. Yeah, I spelled that incorrectly, so let's just correct that. Cracknell, not null. And it's a new rowing boat. So that's the fundamental difference in excellent condition. Okay, and then I think probably the best thing to do would be to go through and give a quick review, just outline the key characteristics of each boat. Let's do that then. So let's start with, we should really start with source A. So source A, the boat has the following conditions. It's really emphasizing how new it is. Brand spanking new. And it's bought from the race organizers. So presumably a reliable source, you know, a good, well-built ship. And it coped well. It coped incredibly well. Coped incredibly well. Coped incredibly well. So they've been doing really well on this boat so far, before this incident. And then it also mentions rowing as well. So it's obviously, and then we've got later on, we've got oars as well. Yeah. Okay, so let's move back now to source B. Storm-shaken old steamship. So that's how it's introduced. Storm-shaken old steamship. So it's basically, this is a weathered ship. It's really weathered and it's kind of battered in and broken down. We have some interesting personification. Here we've got straining timbers, groaning, straining timbers. Let's go here, personification. Groaning. So there's an audio description. Straining. It's timber as well. I imagine the boat of Cracknell and Fogel will be fiberglass. I'll put that timber as well. I'm not sure if it actually told us the material of the other boat, but this boat is definitely timber. Engine throbbing like a human heart. Overworked engine. So obviously it's a very different type of boat. It has an engine, but you know, it doesn't seem that this engine is particularly functioning at optimum level. And then we've got the shape of the boat itself, damaged, long and narrow. There's a lot of details of this boat. So we've got the shape, damaged, long, it's narrow. And then we've also got multiple cabins, a row of cabins, and it's ugly and unsafe. Where can I do this? I'll continue this on the next page here. So B, cabins, you have a row, it's ugly and unsafe. There is a captain as well, who's over 80. and there's also a crew as well, but obviously not the best crew, as we find out later in the extract. So again, that's very different to the boat in source A, where there is just, you don't have a cabin, or you do have a cabin but you don't have a crew. So that's actually one thing I'll put on source A. They just have a single cabin. It's just one cabin for them. Okay, so these are the key differences between them. So that's what I would go through. I'm not going to write the whole answer out here, but these are the key differences. This is mainly a content question. It doesn't really require a great deal of linguistic analysis or anything like that at this point. We're just going back into the source, we're picking out the relevant details, and then we're presenting them. So let me just give a verbal account of this answer right now. So the writers in source A and B are traveling on very different types of boats. Use details from both sources and write a summary of what you understand about the different boats. So the first thing I would say would be, in source A, Ben Fogle and James Cracknell are sailing a brand new rowing boat in excellent condition. In source B, the explorer Hudson is on board an old steamship which is in poor condition. Source A is taken from is written recently, and therefore this is a modern boat, and source B was taken from the late 1800s, so it's a much older boat. And then I would go through the description of both of them. So source A presents their boat as brand spanking new, indicating it is fresh, ready to go, and does not carry any damage or anything of that nature. It's built by the race organizers, who presumably are reputable, so this suggests quality. It's coped incredibly well so far, and obviously this suggests it's been able to withstand the sea and withstand the challenges, so it has a good track record so far before this big incident. It is a rowing boat, and it does have oars, so obviously it's on the two rowers to actually do the paddling and to get themselves across the Atlantic. And there is a single cabin in boat A, in the boat in source A. The boat in source B is in much worse condition. It's described as a storm-shaken old steamship. So we have some alliteration there, which just emphasizes how badly beaten up and damaged this boat is right from the get-go. We also have a sense of personification as well. The ship is presented as groaning, straining, its timber, and its overworked engine is presented as a throbbing heart. So the phrase overworked obviously suggests this is run down. It's an old ship that's been kind of worked into the ground. And the phrases that relate to personifications of groaning and straining both suggest difficulty, challenge, and almost not being able to meet the challenge. The boat is also made of timber as well, because it's an older boat. We also have a description of the shape itself. It's damaged, long and narrow, which doesn't necessarily suggest that the shape doesn't necessarily suggest anything negative. It just gives us a visual description. The fact it's damaged certainly does. And we also have a row of cabins as well, and it's described as ugly and unsafe, and obviously it needs to be manned by a captain. So these are two very different types of ships. One is obviously a rowing boat manned by two people, the other is a battered old steamship, which requires a crew of people, and when they run into trouble, things pan out and play out in different ways. So that's really all you would need to do for a question like this, is just to outline the differences between the two and just give a brief summary of the conditions and the nature of both of those ships. So the plan there, all of this, I've got all of my nice quotations here. I'll just be able to write this down fairly quickly. Obviously, I've just given you a verbal summary there in like 90 seconds, which I would need to improve the wording there for obviously to actually write it down. But these would be the details you would need to incorporate. And if you incorporate all these details, you would be on for 7-8 marks on this question. There's no great analysis really required. It's just picking out the relevant details. So I'll leave this this question here for now, and we're going to come back in the next video, and we're going to look at the third question on this paper.